like to call this special Board of Education meeting to order. Today is October the 21st, 2013. We're here at the district office, I'm sorry. At this time, I'd like to have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have no additional modifications to the agenda. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda as stated in our...
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. All right, so we have one item. It's on this swim team merger. I'd like to call Dr. McArdle and Dr. Fisher to give us a little background first before we start the discussion.
Well, thank you, and I truly appreciate all the board members coming out this evening on short notice, and I appreciate all of the parents and those interested to hear about our findings on the swim merger. Indeed, to call a special Board of Education meeting together means that we have something that is of serious consideration and of serious concern to our parents, our students, and our community. So it's not lightly that we enter into this conversation. Since our last board meeting, we have spent quite a bit of time delving into this. I want to thank Kathy and Margaret for taking the time to meet with us as well, so that we could hear their perspective, hear the concerns of their children and the collective group. Last spring, under Amy's leadership, we were faced with a situation of declining numbers for a swim team, a coaching position that remained unfilled, and of course, as you know, we don't have a pool. I'm not going to get into too many of the details, but we've scrambled for pool time for many, many years. Some of the pool time that we could get, some people were happy with, others were not. But in the light of the circumstances that we were faced with at the time that we go through our process of filling our athletic teams, it was recommended that we merge with Marlboro for our swim team. Highland was also in the process of merging with Marlboro for a swim team. And we took it to the Board of Education, and with that background knowledge, the Board of Education in good conscience voted that without a coach and declining numbers and inadequate pool time, a decision was made. Based on the input we received from members of the swim team, parents, some of the students and community members, we were asked to revisit and to investigate if we had to reverse this decision, what were the possibilities. So from the last board meeting up until tonight, we pretty much rolled up our sleeves and looked at this from pretty much every angle. And Amy McArdle is here to fill us in on some details and to also give a little bit of background about our swim team, the numbers, what led up to the decision, and what we discovered after we took a good hard look at this. So, Amy.
Thank you. So just to recap a little bit, basically last May, a letter was written from me to the superintendent requesting that a merger be put in front of the Board of Education and the superintendent for approval. Again, some of the major concerns had to do with inadequate pool time, the number of students. In the past 7 years, we've had anywhere from 8 to 13 FDR students participating in swimming. We had a merger with Highland, so our numbers were increased due to their participation. However, they were not going to participate with us any longer. Trying to think. So the other major issue was how much swim time, pool time we were getting. Every year, this was a concern brought by the coaches to me. Part of the issue is that during the winter season, that is also collegiate swim time, so it becomes more challenging, of course, to get the pool time in addition to all the clubs that participate. We were having swim times, sometimes only 3 times a week, 2 times a week. Of course, there were days or weeks that we had more time, but inconsistency was a huge concern. Safety concern as well as a preparation concern. Similar to, I wouldn't expect our football team, soccer team, or anybody else to practice 2 or 3 days a week and then compete. That was certainly a factor. The other concern, of course, was always lack of transportation to swimming. However, that was the initial conversation, I guess, when swimming was approved about, I think it's 9 years, or this is going on the 10th year. So what time was swimming happening? Sometimes late in the evening, sometimes right after school. It's always been an issue. So because of all of those things, certainly, I had an opportunity to talk to the Marlboro athletic director, who has a pool, and a recommendation was made to the board to request the merger. The other piece that I think is important has to do with our costs. Our costs for swimming continue to go up, and we have this low participation. So again, average cost per student was about $1,400 compared to most of our other sport teams, which are about $200 to $300 per student. That includes the coach's stipend. And again, while it was not a direct, cause, it was certainly an area where I have to consider what all of the costs are for all of our programs, and how do we manage to fund everything, which is always a challenge every year. Okay, so based on that, obviously at this point that the merger was approved. And then since then, I was specifically asked by Dr. Rychek to investigate the possibility of the demerger with Marlboro. So what I did first was I contacted the league, the section, who both approved the merger. So one of their major concerns for us is that obviously mergers are board approved to make sure that a decision is wanted by a district and not something taken lightly. As the athletic director, I do not have the authority to make the decision on my own. So they're concerned about, reversing it. However, they also have a responsibility and try their best to accommodate any school district request. Part of the reason you do a merger is obviously to maintain program. So again, if the district chooses to do something, they will certainly entertain the possibility. So that's good news that we have an option. One of their biggest concerns has to do with the possibility of, they specifically said, that it may be difficult for us to, it may be difficult for the other schools who are counting on us to merge with them. So that's a consideration that both Highland and Marlboro's Board of Education entered into the merger with an agreement with us for their swim programs. So that is an important consideration. And then the other piece is that the other schools have an opportunity to fill their schedule. The schedule's already created for swimming, so that it could create a problem to swim against FDR. So the sooner that they know the information, the better. So again, that's from the league office. The next piece was concerns that were brought from the parents, specifically in a letter to Dr. Rychek. First concern was practice time 3 to 5 at Marlboro prohibits the inclusion of Haviland Middle School students. So the first point to that is just to mention that Haviland students have to pass selection classification in order to make the team, and there's nothing that guarantees Haviland students from participating. So again, just important to note that we put students through the selection classification process, which is required by the Commissioner of Education, and has very specific rules about students' athletic ability. So they have to take a physical fitness test and be approved by the school doctor. And then our coach would make a determination whether if they pass all of those things, whether they make a determination whether they are on the team or they're not on the team. The other piece is that I did call schools to try to find out what other swim times, not schools, Bard College and Marlboro High School, to find out what their pool time availability was. At this point, we can secure Bard College from 2:45 to 4 o'clock, which still prohibits Haviland students from participating. And correct, they still have, they only have 2 lanes available from 2:45 to 4 o'clock. Again, with the 2 lanes, certainly that's a concern in terms of structure of practice, how you might want to run it. For instance, if you want to have your sprinters in one lane, your distance in another, your strokers, it certainly limits what's going on. Another concern is that the pool time is 2:45 to 4, as opposed to a full 2-hour practice time, so still a little limiting. Marlboro High School has very limited availability. It is later in the evening, but it's not consistent. So we'll have, I think, a total of 6 practices between almost 3 months. So certainly that's not providing enough practice time. Another point was the practice time is not conducive to parent transportation of the swimmers from FDR to Marlboro. The Marlboro time is 3 to 5. The Bard time is 2:45 to 4. So I guess the practice time would still remain identical, so it would not be conducive to the transportation of the swimmers for parents. Another point was that the memo from the athletic director to the superintendent contains inaccurate statements. So the next statement was, as stated, with approximately 17 FDR swimmers and Marlboro indicating 22 swimmers, the total number of swimmers would be excessive and drastically reduce the swim time in individual events for our swimmers. According to the Marlboro athletic director, they expect 15 swimmers, not 22. And our swim team currently has 7 returners, not including Haviland students, which any swim team between 20 and 25 students would certainly create the best possibilities for filling relays and individual events. So I'm not sure, the numbers, but again, I don't see this as necessarily being something negative. It looks like the combined teams would be a good, solid merger and provide the best opportunities for both schools. Reduced swim time. Last season, Marlboro scored 0 points at sectionals. FDR had 28 points. FDR had a relay come back in each event. So my assumption is that FDR has a better chance to have swimmers competing in front of Marlboro swimmers, not the other way around. Seems that we have a little bit of a stronger program. The only thing I can speak to with that is knowing how our merger worked with Rhinebeck for football. Certainly, their better players played over our students. That wasn't always a positive thing, but I would expect the same thing to occur at Marlboro with our own athletes. Practice schedules and name change would confuse and deter students to sign up for FDR Swim. Again, I'm not sure in terms of practice schedule because I have identical, basically, practice schedules in existence. I can understand certainly that having an FDR Swim program versus a merged program may impact student signups. My hope would be that any student who really wants to swim will continue to swim. My observation from students who have swam with us from Highland, Millbrook, and again, the Rhinebeck football merger have all been very dedicated students who have fully participated. And those mergers have all been very positive. So I'm not, I can't predict, but I would hope that our students would still like the opportunity to swim and continue to swim. Another point, and I think this is the final point, on the letter of intent, the reasons for combining of teams remarked on insufficient number of participants and inadequate facilities. Why, if the boys' team had a potential 17 swimmers and the girls' team have 14 swimmers, did the letter of intent for girls' swim team merger not indicate this team having inadequate facilities? So just to, I don't know if everybody understands what I'm talking about there, but basically there are two different mergers. One merger was for girls swimming, and the reasons Millbrook are merging with us is they have insufficient number of participants. They're merging with our team. For us, for the boys swim team, it was we're merging with Marlboro. So again, there's a difference in terms of what's going on. The other piece is that I think, again, important to note, our girls team historically has not fallen below 16 participants. This is the first year where we have 13 students participating. The boys team, again, over the past 7 years, has had very low participation. So the decision to merge didn't happen in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It happened in year 8. So again, we didn't come up with this decision early on. It's looking at, total picture over the long haul. So that's the information in terms of an update based on all of the things that I was asked to provide. And again, I don't know if the board has specific questions related to that information.
Thank you, Amy. I guess at this time, I'd like to hear from board members based on what they've heard or whether they would need any more information.
Well, I had some.
I just wanted to reiterate, just because I'm listening and this is a difficult conversation. So the merger as it stands right now has our boys swim team in a pool 5 days a week from 3 to 5. And just to reiterate, last year the swim time was 6 to 8 a couple of times a week, and the time did vary. But if we were to rent the pool from Marlboro, as Amy indicated, we would have approximately 6 sessions in 3 months. So to maintain the merger would maintain a swim time of actually 6 days a week, because they would be practicing with Marlboro 6 days a week for 2 hours in the pool every day. There was one other point I wanted to make, and it's slipping my mind right now. The Bard, oh yes, I also wanted to add a detail that although the practice time is 3 to 5, if any of our middle school students did qualify, since they don't get out till 3 o'clock, and probably wouldn't arrive to Marlboro until about 3:45, Marlboro said that they would be flexible with their 3 to 5 and permit us extra time at the end of practice, so that minimally any student who qualified from the middle school would be guaranteed an hour plus 5 days a week, and then the full Saturday practice. Again, just to reiterate, the other school or university we looked at, college, was Bard, and they had an hour and 15 minutes, 2 lanes only. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was really clear of what the swim times and the pool availability was with the merger.
So I had some questions, if I may.
Yes. Go.
I had trouble nailing or recording the number of people involved in the team. So could you give us those numbers a little slower?
So you want to know specifically or just over the past 7 years?
I'd like to
It-
understand the number of FDR participants over the last 7 years.
Okay.
I'd also like to understand what the merged team makeup would be.
Okay. So over the past 7 years, the number of FDR participants has ranged from 8 to 13.
And again, we're speaking just boys.
I'm talking about boys swimming. This is in response to boys swimming. And then the makeup of the two teams in terms of what, and again, this is what has been shared from the Marlboro Athletic Director. She expects 15 participants. What I know to be true at this moment in time for FDR is that we have 7 returners. There is also a list that the parents have provided of a number of Haviland students, in addition to a few others. However, a Highland student is on that list, and the Highland student wouldn't be counted, obviously, in our numbers, but there are 6 Haviland students who are listed on this list.
So 7 returners and 6 Haviland students.
Yep, and then there are 2.
Right, and I recognize that the 6 may not even qualify, but a potential
Right,
interest of
and then there
13.
are 3 other students listed as well.
And where are they from? The high school?
They're from the high school.
Okay, so potentially 10 from the high school. Right? Am I doing that math right?
Yeah, sorry to be confusing.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm trying to get it on paper, and I think Steve is too, so, okay.
Yeah, yep.
I have a question about that. If the season is
Glenn,
imminent as
go
it
ahead.
is, why are
Pull the
there,
mic, pull the
Glenn, pull the
pull your
microphone.
mic.
with the season as imminent as it is, why are there 3 people that we're not sure about right now?
Well, again, this is according to parents in terms of who they think are going to try out. We don't have the final lists yet. We haven't gotten from the nurse, so they're in process in terms of our final numbers. So I can't tell you exactly how many students are going to participate. What I know to be true of some of these students, at least one of them currently has never swam. So, again, does that person, it's on a list of interested swimmers, but are they really varsity swim material? I can't answer that question at this point either.
Can you just quickly go through the, and it may be different for swimming or other sports, but could you explain the difference or the scenario? Because I thought I knew, and I don't know all the rules, but what are the regulations about middle school students participating on a varsity sport? And does it apply to swimming? And does it apply if you don't have anything at a lower level? How does that all work?
So basically what the state says, and I'll just read this so that I don't get it incorrect at all. But selection classification is to provide students in grades 7 through 12 a mechanism allowing them to participate safely at an appropriate level of competition based on readiness rather than age and grade. The program is not to be used to fill teams, provide additional experience, provide a place for junior high school students when no modified team is offered, or reward a student. Instead, it is aimed at a few select students who can benefit from such placement because of their level of readiness. So that is what the state requires,
And that's for any sport, right?
all sports.
Right, so if you've got a just unbelievable swimmer at the middle school level, he can be selected and put onto the varsity team.
Correct.
But
They
you
s-
might walk away from the other 5.
Yes.
Example, because they
Abs-
just can't cut
Yes,
you know,
and
cut the
that's true
mustard.
for all sports.
Right, and that would be football, baseball, anything,
Yes.
basketball? Okay.
Historically, how many students have we seen come from the middle school to swim in the varsity?
For boys swimming or any swimming?
For boys.
We've definitely had a few students. It's a small number. The Schiffers, I think your son, when he was in 7th grade and 8th grade, it's generally 2 or 3 students.
2 or 3 students per year? that
No,
come?
I would say the
Oh.
total, sometimes you have 2. Here, I have my numbers here. Hang on. So, last year there were none. The year before, it doesn't tell me. In 2010-11, we had 1, 2, 3 Haviland students. In 2009-10, we had 1 Haviland student. In 2008-9, we had 2 Haviland students. In 2007-8, we had 1 Haviland student.
If we don't merge with Marlboro, what are our prospects of a coach for a standalone FDR team?
Well, at this moment in time, I'm under the impression that our coach from last year is interested in returning.
And that situation has changed since we considered the merger.
Correct?
Do we have a commitment from that coach?
He's sitting here. I do not, currently I have his word and the word of the parents, absolutely.
Amy, a clarification. I believe we saw a memo that indicated that Roosevelt finished last year's swim team with 7 members, of which 1 did not participate, which reduced it to 6, and 1 was a senior, which sort of indicated that the expectations were, as of the team that finished last year, we'd only have 5 coming back this year.
I have 7 students listed as returners. I'm not 100% sure.
All right, so the information in the other letter, either I misunderstood it or...
I don't recall which or what, but I believe there are 7 returners.
Thank you.
I have a question about the practice areas. I know that we're limited on pools in the area, but I know Poughkeepsie has a pool. I'm not quite sure. I think Beacon has a pool also. Have you investigated either one of the districts?
We've investigated a number of pools in the area. It is virtually impossible to get into Poughkeepsie, the Culinary, Marist College. There is a pool of some pool availability at Mount St. Mary College. However, it's at a cost that is about 5 times as much as any other pool in this area.
If you think Marlboro's far.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But that's about the only pool that I could, there's a possibility of getting additional time at this point.
You gonna use it or what?
I'm going to use it, yeah. So just to understand, the Marlboro saying that there's 6 times available over the next 3 months?
Yeah, their pool is booked.
So we're saying 6 practices
Yeah,
over
yes.
3 months? I mean,
Correct.
that's not a schedule.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm not recommending that we do that. I'm just letting you know that's what's available at this point in time.
What were the times that, what was the BARD schedule? It was 2 lanes, 2:45 to 4 o'clock, how many days a week?
5.
What's the comparative travel time from the high school to BARD as opposed to the high school to Marlboro?
Okay, I actually have that. Surprise, surprise. I Google mapped it. Let me just see. So I don't
It's
tell you the
definitely
wrong.
faster, because you're just going up to
Yeah.
just Red Hook versus
So,
fighting your way through Poughkeepsie, the
Bard
bridge.
College says 15.3 miles
And no bridge.
and no bridge. Marlboro High School is 21.2 miles.
A lot more traffic and a bridge.
Bridge in 9W, 9.
That's distance, do you have time?
Time, estimated time. Sorry. 24 minutes versus 33 minutes.
It's right without traffic.
Something you mentioned was very interesting to me. You said that the cost per athlete, average cost per athlete for the boys swim team was around $1,400, whereas most other athletic programs is around $200 or $300 per athlete. What drives the higher cost?
The swim pool rental. The
Pool time rental.
pool time and then the low participation. So if I had football, I have, between three levels, I have over 180 participants. If I only have 9 participants,
Sure, it's an average, so the
But the-
fewer
but-
number of
yeah.
participants, the
Yeah.
higher the average cost.
absolutely.
What's the average cost for the girls' swim team?
Good question. Their costs are actually a little lower because of the number of student participants. This year, I can't tell you exactly. I would have to get back to you on their number, but their number is typically lower. Part of the reason being that the fall season is a month shorter than the winter season. So right away, that reduces costs. Winter season goes November until the end of February.
The girls, pardon my ignorance, they swim in the fall then?
Yes, they
Oh,
do.
okay, and the boys are the winter?
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay.
Amy, what is the start date for permitted practices for the swim teams for the winter competition?
November 11th is the start date.
And you're saying we don't have any numbers. Do we know how many applications have actually been filed for participation through the nurse?
I have actually gotten only 3 in my office so far, and none of them are swimming. So I expect over the next week to get a ton of stuff, but we have not had the school doctor sign off on.
But if these are participants that are only swimming, that means they've got to go through the full boat clearance of the nurse, the doctor.
All our
Actual-
winter sports are still in process right now. Swimming is no different than any other at
But
this point.
I was under the impression, like, if you were playing football and you moved on to basketball,
They still have to be.
they have to be screened, but they also have the advantage that typically they've already cleared the paperwork for saying, I've had a physical in the last year with my doctor.
Yeah, and we have some swim participants who've done a fall sport who would be the same. I just haven't received their paperwork as of yet.
What's the cost if we unmerge versus the cost if we stay with the merger?
The merger cost is about $42 per student.
Do you have total cost for me? Or do you only have the per student cost?
I only have the per student
That's
cost.
good enough then. So the merger cost is 42 per student?
Basically, it costs us a swimsuit.
So we're not paying for pool time?
Correct.
We're not paying for transportation to and from meets?
Transportation remains the same. This is not, the costs that I provided do not include any transportation because our transportation costs remain identical
Okay.
or very similar.
Just
Okay.
as a point or question, I mean, maybe it's the cost of a swimsuit, but wouldn't it, and I don't know.
And some
Marlboro does.
swimsuits cost a lot more. This is what the
Yeah.
price they've given me.
Yeah, I
so
mean, like, they didn't
I
include the cost of the coach?
They did not.
That's odd.
This
'Cause
is
I know
what,
if it was the other way around, I'd say, well, if we've got 10 students swimming with us from another school, we're gonna take all the kids, including ours, divide by the total number, and here's what your share of the coach costs, because why are they picking up the tab for a coach? But that's, well.
that's the
anyway.
decision that
They're not
they're-
exactly in great financial shape, so I'm surprised they didn't sharpen their pencil and figure that out.
Yeah,
All
Amy,
right.
what is
We'll
Bard
put the
planning
gift
to
horse in the
charge?
mouth.
Can I finish the question?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Didn't know you
So-
weren't finished.
Yeah, so I just wanted to verify the cost if for a non-merger is 42, the cost if we unmerge is 1,400
per
per
student.
person, per athlete, roughly? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Glenn.
What is the cost per lane at Bard? Do you know?
It's, I believe it's $10 per hour
Per lane?
per lane.
That's what I heard.
It's only 2 lanes, right?
2 lanes. And that's available 5 days a week?
Yes. With the possibility of, some, obviously weekends, depending on whether or not they're available. So not consistent, but certainly we could make every effort.
Is it possible to get those 6 days as well out of Marlboro's pool?
Do you mean 6 days and then whatever Bard has?
If indeed it's better to be in the Marlboro
issue
pool
would-
for more lanes.
Not entirely, only because we're not going to have, their lanes are available during the same time as Bard, so we wouldn't go
Okay.
swim at Bard from 2:45 to 4 and then go to Marlboro 6 to 8 on the same day. So it's not like we could gain additional.
Well, I know, but if we had the entire pool at Marlboro, it would
We could do that
perhaps be
instead.
worth going there
Yes,
instead on
we,
those days.
we absolutely could do that instead.
6 days isn't much, but
Yes. When I spoke to them, that's when their pool was available. Their pool, obviously, the longer we wait, becomes less available. but we could absolutely secure it for those 6 times.
Well, this is what I see, and it's just putting it out there and trying to parse it all out. So let's just assume for the moment that we can untangle the merger. If that were possible and not going to create havoc, then really I see 2 issues to deal with. Apparently a coach is now available. So now, this district has to consider, one, is it going to eat the total cost of the program? But 2, more importantly, can appropriate pool time be provided? And I don't mind saying that back when we first talked about swimming, when I was on the board eons ago, and we brought the program into the district, I was happy to expand on the program. One thing I had a concern about was getting proper pool time, because it's just not available. It's very difficult, and now suddenly it becomes our problem to figure out how to run a swim program. We don't have a swimming pool, and you can't just make one appear like that. So I mean, I just that's what I see the issue is, whether you can get the correct amount of pool time, and 2, do you want to eat the cost of the program, assuming that we can unwind ourselves from the merger, or even if we wanted to. But that's what I see the issue is at this point.
Amy,
One more.
sorry.
Go ahead.
In other sports, there is a requirement from the beginning of practice till the first competitive event can occur to meet minimum standard of practice and participation.
Yes.
With 6 sessions at barred over a 3-month period, is there a requirement in swimming to?
Yeah, so what happens basically for our swim team is we have dry land practice whenever we can't be in the pool. So we can certainly meet the requirement. They don't say you have to swim for a certain number of days. They have to have practice.
What is that, like conditioning and stuff?
Yes, yes, sorry. It's anything that's done, strength
Athletic,
training,
right.
yes, outside of the pool. So we would obviously meet those requirements by combining anything that we could in order to satisfy the state in terms of what's required.
And I assume it's a far reach to believe that any or all or any of the students could find swim time on their own to get ready for these events. I mean, we've only got a limited number of pools, and these pools are supporting swim programs. Marist's got a swim program. Marist's got a swim team. It's also got a crew team, which I would assume uses some of the pool time, and the other schools are in the same boat. So
Mostly, I mean, primarily, besides the college teams, it's club teams that are, utilizing the pool all the time, which, again, some of our swimmers do participate in clubs. So they are swimming on their own outside of, whatever the swim team is doing. Some do not.
I had no children participate in swim. I had 8 students play at the varsity level on average 2.5 sports a year. And I've talked to them recently about this situation. And my question was, what type of competitive level could you achieve if you're not practicing the sport you're doing the events you're competing in? And their feeling was, it's just like walking in and having a pickup game. It's just not a competitive situation.
I think it definitely impacts our ability, to perform. Could students perform better if they had more consistent pool time and longer time? I believe that to be true.
And I also would be concerned about the risk of injuries, although, a lot of conditioning can be done outside the pool, the stretching, the running, the aerobic type of things, but there's got to be exertions and things done in a pool that cannot be achieved anywhere else. And, if I've seen anything in sports over the last 20 years, the amount and seriousness of injuries have escalated unbelievably. At a time when we get better and better medical care and stuff like that, it doesn't seem to, we don't have to go down to the level of high school sports. We can look at college sports and professional sports where they got millions of dollars invested in athletes. Yet these athletes are falling by the wayside at an unbelievable rate. It's scary.
I can help you with that. The biggest injury that happens in swimming is repetitive stress on the shoulder from doing too many laps. That is it. However, you are right. You need to have the time in the pool. My daughters were on the Marist Swim Club, the Bard Swim Club. They were in the ESSL League and the U.S. Swim League, and they got a lot more time in the pool, and that's why they were successful. That's why. However, there haven't been that many boys that have done that in our program ever. Swimming seems to be a more popular sport among girls these days.
Well, I've got a grandniece that's swimming for UCal at Fullerton.
The injury thing is, it happens from overtraining with swimming.
I just
Unless
haven't.
you swim smack into the wall. I've done that.
My sister and I talked for about an hour about my grandniece and her competitions, and I was amazed at the commitment of time she's making.
Oh, it's immense. To be a top-notch swimmer,
And
the amount of time is immense.
Even be a competitive swimmer, what she had actually committed at the high school level in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which probably offers a better opportunity. I would think there you might be able to swim almost year-round.
You can.
It's outside, and everybody's got one.
So
Outdoors.
I have further questions for Dr. McCardle. We're talking about taking an existing team in Marlboro, existing athletes over there, an existing coach with a relationship that, exists, and adding FDR students. And one of the points you made earlier is that in the mergers where it has been the reverse situation, decisions on who plays versus who doesn't were made in a colorblind way. Colorblind meaning, a student from one high school versus another.
Yes.
So my question is, what kind of assurances do we have that that's how decisions will be made here?
A couple of things. One, I think it's important to note that Marlboro took a 12-year hiatus from having a boys' swim team. This is only, I believe, their third year back as a swim program. So that's part of the reason they're in the position they are in terms of participants and competitiveness. One of the things, again, having conversations with the athletic directors, I think whenever you agree on a merger, boards of education agree, part of it is you want to have positive experiences for both schools. So it's not in their best interest to approve a merger and then make our kids not participate. I think swimming, like track and field and other things, it really is dependent on your time and your ability, which puts you in more relays versus, students who aren't necessarily of that ability. So this is a varsity program. I think we have students who certainly do well and have done well. I think that with consistent pool time, I would only expect that we do better. And so again, from their perspective, they want to make this work. So there's a little bit of trust that you have to put in. I know that doesn't make everybody feel, 100% guaranteed. But the only thing I can say is it's been my experience that that's what's worked for us. And that's why we've agreed to some of these mergers. I can't give you any more assurance than that's what has been shared with me.
Okay. Did you want to?
Question. These practice times at both schools, they're probably limited because of the late request for them? Mm-hmm.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
I think it's important to note the one piece of, Bard's availability last year was very similar in terms of time. That doesn't change much. Our girls had that swim time last year, and it was a little bit of an issue or concern from some parents. In terms of Marlboro, absolutely. Last year we were able to secure a lot more pool time than 6 times in 4 months.
So my second part of the question is, if you demerged next year, you knew early enough, you'd have a better chance of getting practice schedules in.
Yeah.
Better than what you're receiving.
Yeah, I
now.
think, again, part of the conversation that's important is that we haven't merged, we haven't had a push to merge, and we still have had struggles with getting adequate practice times, and we start, well in advance. So there's no guarantee. However, I would expect more time than 6, certainly. But pools still have limited availability. Clubs take priority over school teams. And unfortunately, we cannot get in. You know, the culinary would be great. We have not been successful at being able to get into that pool.
How much did you talk to the existing athletes and their parents as we were preparing to enter into the merger?
I absolutely did not have conversation, and I take complete ownership of that. There was a lack of communication between me, the students, as well as the parents. Part of this is, again, process. In the past, when we've had mergers, and what my colleagues do is typically work with the Board of Education and haven't necessarily followed that procedure of sitting down and having open discussions with the parents. Again, I'm not saying that was the right thing to do. It's absolutely the reality. So the students heard at the end of September, and then their parents heard from them.
Okay. It's been more than 3 decades since I was on a swim team, so I'm going to need you to refresh my memory. How many events are there and how many opportunities are there to compete?
I'm not a swim coach, nor am I a swimmer, and have I ever been. However,
Well, the core of the question is,
here, I'll share it.
how large is a 25-person team? Is it
Well,
medium-sized or small? And how many opportunities does that give each of our athletes?
so basically, what I believe is that swimmers are allowed to swim a maximum of 4 events per meet, no more than 2, which can be individual events. And please correct me.
Two relays.
2 relays.
Individual events.
Okay,
Or 3 relays and 1 individual event.
thank you.
And there's 8 individual events and 3 relays.
Thanks.
Amy, just for the camera, could you repeat those
Yeah.
numbers?
Could you repeat them for me, Derek?
There's 8 individual events,
8 individual events,
3 relays.
3 relays.
That you can swim 1 individual event and 3 relays,
You can swim 1 individual event and 3 relays,
or 2 individual events and 2 relays.
or 2 individual events and
2 relays.
2 relays.
How many participants from a specific swim team or school is permitted in each of the individual events?
Different school.
I mean, can FDR enter up to 3 students in an individual event?
There's only three lanes eligible unless the school is going to pay more money for a second heat.
So the event is held, so you can hold a dual meet or a
Yeah.
3?
There would be like 2 teams competing. You have 6 lanes participating, 3 from one school, 3 from another school.
So you could have 3 Marlboro Roosevelt students swimming against 3 Rhinebeck students?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we're talking 8 individual events, 3 swimmers per event, so that's 24 participants. Plus, we're talking another 12 students in relays. So if you filled every potential slot for a meet, you would have 24 and 12, 36 swimmers competing that day if there was no extra events?
36 divided by 4, possibly.
You lost me there.
If you have 36 available slots, but you can only swim 2 swimmers per relay,
Excuse me, Mr. President, can we have him step to the mic so he can be heard?
Thanks.
We're all for information.
That's for the camera.
so if you have 36 spots for swimmers to swim, but you can only swim 2 individual events and 2 relays, it boils down to 36 divided by 4, which is 9. So if you had it, or I don't know my math, so that would be 9, right? So if you maximize all your relays and all your events, it's not going to be that you need 24 swimmers. A good substantial team would be like 16, and I'm pretty sure that could cover everyone on the events. And that's not including diving, because we don't have a diving board, nor because we don't have a pool, and we don't have a diver except for 1 year, except for last year.
So your point is that a team of 9 individuals could cover all of the events?
Not 9, I said maybe 16, because you can't have 3 swimmers, or one person swim 3 individual events. So it's not gonna work out completely with that division, but I would say
Okay.
14 to 16 people on a team, you could have everything covered.
Or you could have a large team of 36 to 40, and each swimmer gets one event.
Possibly, but then where would you be? Because then if you have swimmers that can't swim,
Right.
you're not gonna be competitive
Yeah.
that way either.
Yeah,
I'm just exploring the limits. I'm not saying one is better than the other.
Okay, sir.
yeah, and I wanted to just clarify, and I see where you're going, Steve, at least from a straight numbers perspective, but if you compare it to something else you're very familiar with, a gymnastics meet, you know, you don't just put anybody up on the bars. Some people only do bars, some people only do beam, you know, so the same for swimmers, and you put up your best based on their best, most recent time. So not everybody does the butterfly, not everybody does, so, but
Sure.
you're
Yeah.
you're looking at just straight numbers, but just in case somebody else doesn't understand, the whole swim team doesn't necessarily participate in any or all of the events. It's not a kind of open thing like that.
Yeah, yeah, I was just trying to get a raw gauge of opportunity.
Right, right.
This is your chance. Any other?
Yeah, just one other quick, so we're looking at some limited, swim times. What would be, and I don't wanna say ideal, but maybe the more historical norm of, is a 2-hour swim per day a typical?
Yes.
Okay. So that will happen if we stay merged with Marlboro. If not, we're looking at a reduced swim time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is this a fair summary of the comparison we're looking at? With the merger, we've got a pool time of 12 hours a week, a competitive schedule that's already tentatively created, travel time of roughly 33 minutes to and from the high school, and a cost of $42 per student, versus a non-merger, which would be about 6.25 hours per week of swim time. Competitive schedule that would still have to be arranged from scratch. 24-minute travel time, and a cost of about $1,400 per student.
Yes.
Thank you.
There's one other difference. If they were at Marlboro, Haviland kids could go down there. And they said, you did say that they were willing to adjust the time,
Yes.
right? But that won't happen at Bard.
Okay. Good point.
Are there any other questions?
Just if we know it, the 6 swimmers from Haviland, have they competed in the past at other swim club levels, where they've been in competition and or are they relatively new? I mean, we see this at the high school. We have, basketball players that have been playing basketball since the 5th grade at a competitive level. So by the time they get to Haviland, they're at a position to really start to blossom and learn. The same thing with baseball between Little League and Pop Warner for football.
I do not know 100% of the students. I know that some of them do participate in club swimming. So, again, I would expect that they have swim ability, but I do not know how, if they belong at a varsity level or not at this point.
Yeah. And the other question, I know for a fact that the selective classification test is checking endurance, agility, speed. So the students that take the test are being asked to do things that they may have never done before,
That's correct. We had,
and which makes it difficult for them at times to pass the test, especially if they come in cold on the day of the test and suddenly say, "What do you mean I got to do a side step from 6 feet from side? I got to do a standing jump of 6 feet or a running jump of 10 feet." They're checking the capability and physical ability of the student to compete, but it doesn't necessarily test only skills associated with that sport.
that's correct.
I'm just wondering what the probability of, I would guess maybe if you got 2 out of the 6 Haviland students to pass the selective classification exam, that would be a good number?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can speak to is this fall with the girls, we had 2 additional swimmers at Haviland who swam club and who were thought to be excellent swimmers who did not pass selection classification. We also have some that did. So again, every student who may qualify in terms of swimming ability doesn't necessarily meet the standard in terms of selection classification. It is a very challenging test for some students. So.
Anybody else got anything else? All right.
No, I just wanted to say, as our closing comments, that we are incredibly proud of all of our athletes, and we are incredibly proud of our athletic program. And we certainly don't take lightly or underestimate what it might be like to merge and have our students switch to a different logo. And there was certainly, on our part, the 100% intention of our athletic director, and I support her recommendation, is to provide the most viable varsity competitive program. And sometimes that's the most difficult thing to do in light of all the circumstances that we were looking at last spring, and certainly in light of looking some students in the face and having to say, you may have to wear a different uniform. We would hope that as a community, we would do everything to support them and to remain proud of their competitiveness, of their opportunity both in varsity swimming here and in any collegiate opportunities they may have as a result of participating in varsity competition. So I just wanted to say in closing that this is incredibly difficult. We wish we had a lot of things, but as it stands, I support the athletic director's recommendation that was made last spring. We did our due diligence to seek out alternatives at this date, and our viable option remains to continue with the merger. I will also say that this would be a year to watch and to see how the merger goes. And I would also recommend that we put a process in place for mergers. And the process includes what are some of the red flags, what are some of the criteria for us to consider a merger? What would be the communication plan of a merger? What would be some of the cost analysis, some of the team numbers, so that we're not caught by surprise, similar to getting a mid-January report on where we are with our enrollment study, so that we stay ahead of the curve. I would highly recommend we develop a process for mergers.
Okay, thank you. And now I'd like a motion to go into public participation, please.
So moved.
Second.
There any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? We are now in public participation because this is a special meeting. I'd like to waive the 21-minute rule, certainly. And if you could keep to 3 minutes, that's great. I will not cut you off. I think it's important enough if you have something you really want to say that you get to say it. But please remember there's other people that would like to talk, and there's a football game on. No, sorry. So with that said, would anybody like to address the board?
Hey, Derek Kettner, coach, former, possibly still. Pool time is the issue here on both sides, whether you approve it or you don't. Haviland kids can't make it if they did pass the test, right? And Bard doesn't seem like a good chance too. Why not ask Marlboro if they could split their pools if we don't merge with them and have 2 coaches there? They can have 3 lanes, we could have 3 lanes. Was that a possibility at all? I'm not sure. Also, my star swimmer on the team had to have a tutor last year, so therefore he had a tutor right after school until 3 o'clock. So now you're telling me that my star swimmer also won't be able to swim because he's getting further educated, but the swim times are only 3 to 5. But then they'll possibly waive one out a little bit for Haviland kids. And I guess that's what I hear sitting there. Also, I believe Mr. Duffy said last Thursday or 2 Thursdays ago, that with this test, the swimmers were allowed, or anybody was allowed to take it a couple times to see if they passed. And if they had prior knowledge of it, all right, let's get the numbers and see who these kids are and train them so they could pass the test, not just have them come in cold and fail the test. There are things in place that we could do to help this program out and not just have people fail and then say, oh, well, they didn't fail, the numbers aren't there. Last year, we started out with a team that had, 13 individuals. And by the end of that season, we had 1 family. So, there was a lot of weirdness going on, but we all merged and we came together as one. Also, one of my worst swimmers who'd never been in the pool before ever ended up being the diehard behind our team. And he swam in sections because I let all my kids swim in sections because I had, at that time, I think 12 swimmers at sections. So they all got a chance to swim in section finals. Marlboro had the same opportunity to do that as well and failed to show up. So my question is, coach, because he was the same coach as last year. Now, I don't care if I lose a job or not, because it's not about me, it's about the kids. So I ask you guys that question.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to?
Yeah, I have actually some.
Thank you.
I would like to address some of the things that Dr. McCardle spoke to. First,
Could I ask what your name is?
I'm sorry, Kathy Craven.
Thank you.
And you were talking about the selective classification test and whether the swimmers that pass it are varsity level. My son passed it in 7th grade and has made sectionals every year, just to point that out. The Bard swim time, actually, there's more swim time available. Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 7:30 is also available. He has offered us double sessions on Saturday and Sunday, the early session 7 a.m. to 8:30, and he didn't have a time for the afternoon when I spoke to him. And he said more with the holidays, and they'd be able to have more time available, so I just wanted to clear that up. The schedule that we could use is all the buys that are on all the other teams' schedules. They're already out there. All we have to do is take them. There's only 2 conflicts, and that's with, I believe, 2 of the bigger teams, Washingtonville and Monroe Woodbury, which we could do a dual meet with Rhinebeck on those days. So the meet schedule is already set up. Nobody has to do anything about that. Marlboro is indicating 23 swimmers on their roster. It's on Section 9. If you pull up a Section 9 inquiry, you'll see 23 swimmers. As Coach Kettner pointed out, we had 2 individual swimmers that went to sectionals. Marlboro didn't have any. Transportation, I'll go back to this. For the practice time of 3 to 5, swimmers will have difficulty making the practice time, as we've talked about, because of the transportation, but there is no transportation. So even if Marlboro gives us 3 to 5, there's no way for anybody to get there. Would you be able to take your kids right now to make a 3 to 5 practice, is my question. Of the parents, I am the only parent that can do this. I only can fit 6 kids in my car. What 6 kids will I take? Who will I leave behind? Of the kids that are at FDR. If we're not even talking about Haviland, that's another hour later. What am I going to do? Drive out to Marlboro, drive back, fill up my car, drive back. How will the kids get get home. We just have no way of making these hours that are available. It would be wonderful to have 6 days a week, but if we can't get there, we cannot utilize those hours. There are other facilities in the area. Newburgh, Mount St. Mary's, JCC, New Paltz, Kingston High School, Vassar, Beacon. Any of these schools could have been called to find out, limiting the calls to Bard and Marlborough is not investigating all of the pools. So I guess the big question is, how do we get the kids there if there's no transportation? If we can use Bard on the weekends, would we be able to find pool time at other pools? Might not be consistent, but it's pool time. Last year we had 6 to 8. That was perfect. This year we have, right now, approximately 13 people that I know of that are going to be coming out for the boys' swim team. Merging that with the 23 that are indicated on Section 9 for Marlborough, that's excessive. You're going to have 6, 7 kids in a lane, most of which might be novice swimmers. My son and Nick, who have made section times, and the other boys who are close to making section times, how are they going to participate? They get down, they get back, and they have to wait for everybody else in the lane. As of right now, there's only 1 or 2 swimmers in the lane when they practice. As of right now, the boys, when they swim at the swim meets, every single one of them gets to swim 4 times. If we merge with Marlborough, that's not going to happen. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Hoffman. I sent everybody an email today. I don't know if everybody got it. My son Robert is a sophomore. He's been swimming for years, like during the summer, and he swam for the Millbrook club team. So, a couple of issues. I mean, I understand the fact that, we could talk about what the protocol is going to be moving forward, but that still doesn't address the fact that nothing was done in regards to what the issues were as a team and what needed to be done. I mean, we were going to Haviland, we went to FDR, we had tables set up, we were talking to parents, the swimmers were there, trying to drum up membership and getting more kids involved in the swim team. So we could talk about what you're going to do moving forward, but that still doesn't address the fact that there are kids who have worked really hard to be part of this swim team and have worked real hard to come together, that are just going to kind of get pushed to the side. Now, you could say that, it's in best interest that, we're combining them with Marlborough, but that still doesn't take the fact of the work that they've done as a team. I cannot, as a parent, get my son to practice at 3 o'clock. I can't. There's no way that I can do that. And I could depend on other parents or kids that drive, but I don't know how comfortable I feel putting my son in a car with another 17-year-old driving to Marlborough every day. I don't like driving to Marlborough at 4 or 5 o'clock. I don't want to put my son in a car with a teenage driver every day, hoping that I got to worry, are they getting there and what's on the road. He's academically doing very well. He was all Mahal for crew. He's involved with honors classes. One of his honors classes is in the late class that he's going to have to miss when he has to go to meets, when he has to be at Marlborough at 2:30. He has aspirations of being part of the AP American History next year. When he misses global, 2 times a week during season, how is that going to impact him academically? So, I mean, I understand the financial and all, I do, and I'm not, but, it's difficult to kind of move forward with a plan when we're doing it at the last minute. Last year, we had a lot of time at Marlborough, and we practiced pretty much almost every day at Marlborough last year at 6 to 8. So what's the issue this year that we can't get that same time? Is it because they want the merger? I don't know, but why can't we get that time again that we had last year that worked for us as a team? So all I'm asking you to do is to look at the big picture, and the big picture is, how do we make this work for these kids, and how do we get them? And if the issue is, if the decision is Marlborough, and that's the decision that you guys have to make, then what's going to be the contingency in regards to transportation and getting them there? We're going to then take the money that we're not using for a pool and work out transportation for them to get back and forth every day so that they can make practice, so that we can make sure that they're getting there safely and getting back on time, you know, and consistently, and not worrying about what parent is doing it or not doing it. And if Kathy is sick and she can't get the kids there, then what do? They miss practice and they can't be, you know, then it impacts them as being part of the team. So, you know, just some questions that, you know, we need to look at and come up with some plans in regards to how we're going to make this work. If the issue is having to do that, you know, then how do we make that work so that the kids can get there and be actively part of that? That's not what I want. I want that to be the FDR team, but I also want to look at what is the picture going to look like if we have to merge, and how are we going to get these kids there, and getting them there at 2:30 in the afternoon for a meet when they have to leave 2 classes every day and not being able to meet with their teachers after school, which is an important part academically. You know, those options won't be there for them because they're going to be on a bus or getting in a car and running over to Marlboro to get over there for swim. All right, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Lynn Schiffer, and yes, I've had 3 children on the girls and boys swim teams. With all due respect, I've, heard everything tonight, and I hear about the due diligence that's been done, but I have to question that due diligence. The first thing I have to question is whether really every place where we possibly could get pool time has really been looked into. And I don't think it has. Just quickly sitting here on my phone, I was looking at the Jewish Community Center and what their schedule looks like, and every single day of the week they have what they call open swim time. And that open swim time is time when, yes, there's time for people just to swim, but there's also laps. Maybe, I don't know, I haven't asked, I haven't been in the position to ask, but maybe that's another possibility of a place where kids can swim. Is it a huge pool like what they compete in? No, it's not. But in the boys' team, when my son was in, I think, 7th and 8th grade, that is where they had their practices. So there is another place that's an option. Second thing I do have to question also is this whole transportation situation. I know that my son, who is a sophomore right now, for him to be 5 days a week at Marlboro immediately after school, I work. I absolutely cannot get him there. I also cannot just depend on Kathy, who would be the only of all the parents I'm aware of that is available to be able to drive them then. I would ask if that is the solution, if we end up this meeting that Marlboro is going to be a merger, that we invest some money in transporting the kids there. And yes, we could rely on parents, I think, to pick the children up afterwards, so the bus maybe wouldn't have to wait. But maybe an option is that we have a bus to transport the kids there after school so they can get to practice. Another thing, though, that really does concern me that I've also heard brought up right before me is when there are meets. Now, typically the way that this works is that from about mid-December through first or second week of February, there will be meets probably twice a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, but that's pretty typical. Well, in the past, when there were meets, with the exception of the very furthest away schools, the kids would not leave until school was over. They were able to get to their meets by staying for their full day of school, finish their last class, and then they would head to the meets. The exceptions I know were Minisink and maybe, Warwick. So, there were a couple that they did have to leave early. In the situation we're talking about now, merging with Marlboro, every single one of those days when there is a meet, in order to go on that bus with the kids from Marlboro, our kids would have to leave school early. They would have to miss 1 or 2 classes every single day. I'll tell you right now, I will not allow my son to do that. School is very important to him. His classes are important to him. Being successful in his classes are important to him. And I'm not going to let him miss his honors classes 2 times a week for 2 months for the entire season. It doesn't make sense. It was one thing when it was twice during the entire season for him to miss a class, but to miss 2 classes, to make that Marlboro bus twice a week for 2 months, it's not happening. So, as I said, I think there's more to look at when we talk about the due diligence here. I think there's some other things that need to be considered. Thanks.
Anyone else? You gotta get up. You gotta get up and go on.
Hi, I'm John Holman. And I swam for Lourdes way back when. And we didn't have a pool, so we had to swim basically anywhere we could to practice. We spent a lot of time down at the YMCA. We went over to the JCC. We really had kind of a rolling schedule, and there were always other people there when we were doing it. So having a pool to yourself is not always necessary for being on a swim team. So I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. Also, I think you can't really claim due diligence if you haven't involved the participants. To do it, make these decisions, and then months later say, this is what we're going to do. I mean, it's not the way we work.
I am Margaret Craig, and I do appreciate the time that we were given to meet you and have a conversation about it. I suppose when all is said is done, I'm really disappointed that you are still supporting this idea, because the reality is that it looks really good on paper. It looks good to say to these guys, okay, you're going to have 2 hours of pool time. And yet I see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 7 or 9 that are listed that won't even be participating. So where will that be for us next year? There will be no place for us next year if we do this merger. The transportation issue is huge, but what's not on paper, and what I ask you, I implore you to consider, is the fundamental unit that this team is. We had a wonderful banquet at the end of the year last year at Capola's. It also happened to be my son's 16th birthday. Now, I know that girls have 16th birthday parties, but I said to Nick, I said, well, what would you like to have? And he said, you know what? I want to celebrate with my team. I want to be there with the guys. And that's all he asked. And so we were at Capola's, and we were a team. And these guys were a unit. And for everybody in this room who would not like to go back to high school, I believe that you can recognize the importance of that unit socially, how it improves them academically, and how if you disentangle that, how difficult it will be to put it back together, if at all. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Robert Hoffman. I'm a sophomore at FDR, and I was swimming since I was about 8 years old. And I joined the team in 9th grade because I didn't want to have to leave my classes when I was in 7th grade and 8th grade. But and then in about 7th grade, I was swimming on a club team that I really enjoyed, and I was doing really well in. But since of last year, I really enjoyed the team, and with Coach Kettner, my times had really, really improved. So I made the decision to drop my club team and just basically do FDR. And now with the merger, I most likely will not be able to do the FDR team. So then where does that leave me? I have no swim team until the summer. So that leaves me with pretty much, I get to focus on my grades, but then there's no athletic aspect of, or I don't know, but there's no sports that I'm doing, and then that just leaves me something I love, I can't do it. And I want to swim when I'm in college, and then a whole season off is going to really affect that, because I won't have my times, will not improve this season, because I'm not going to have a team to be on, and that could affect scholarships and where I want to go, and I don't know how I'm going to get into some of the schools that I want to. I've been considering looking at Ithaca College. And if I can't swim this season, and if the team gets dropped due to this, what am I going to do when I want to go to school and I have no team that they can look at and look at my times, and I get no scholarships and no money, and then I'm forced to stay community or just go to a state school when I really wanted to go to a nicer school or a private school. And, the team last year, we were like a family. Over the summer, our coach came to the he like had us all go to the Dutchess County Fair together. We hung out all the time outside of swim. Even after the season, we would hang out at one of the swimmers' houses, and we'd always have like group messages. We'd stay together, like always in tech, like connected. And like even now, I still ask like some of the seniors who graduated, like ask them how school is, like, and I stay connected with them. And but now like there's not going to be much of a connection. Like there's no team this year, and I'm afraid that like I'll drift from some of the friends that I've made from the swim team that I won't be seeing in school, because I don't see them in school because a lot of them are either older or younger than me, and swim was like a really good way to connect with them. So I'm just really hoping that you reverse your merger with Marlboro and that we could get our own team. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Stanton. I am a parent of an alum of the FDR swim team. I have a question for Dr. McCardle. In the springtime, did you start researching pool time for just the FDR swim team?
We don't comment now.
We don't comment now?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
So that would be my first question.
We'll record your questions and we'll try to address them at
All
the
right.
end.
So that would be my first question, is when, it seems to me, and this could be a misunderstanding on my part, but the merge was the only thing that was looked at in the spring. There was, and I know as a parent of club swimmers and, just competitive swimmers for years, the early bird gets the worm. So the sooner that you look for pool time is the sooner that you get your team set up. So from a business standpoint, I would have hoped that we would have looked at a merger and swim time. We talk about due diligence. Due diligence at this time, and again, remember, I'm looking at it from the outside in now, is keeping the team as it is now, as just the FDR swim team. And because these people were blindsided, and I think we would all agree upon that, that this team stays the way it is due to the fact that it was not handled properly. You can look at it again next year and see if the numbers and whatever else needs to be looked at needs to change. But I really feel that this is going to leave a very ill feeling with your Board of Education and these people sitting here. And I just really believe that that's something that you need to take a look at. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Patty Holman, and I thank you again for listening to us, having an open discussion. And I just want to say we have a team. We have a great FDR team, and mostly because of this coach and because of these team members. My son never swam before, never. And last year he was doing flip turns, doing the 500, and mostly because of the coach and because of the support from all of his team members. It bothers me a little bit that we're discussing $1,400, the cost of per swim member, $1,400. The budget, I understand, is $12,000, $12,000. Well, that's been blown out of the water now because you don't have to pay anything but a swimsuit. So we will have, this is the beginning of the end of FDR swim team. If these swimmers can't make it to practice, you're basing next year on this year, there won't be any swim team. I implore you to please look at the other options, give us some time to look at the other options, and help this swim team to survive. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to? Okay, may I have a motion to go out of public participation, please?
So moved.
Second?
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? We are now out of public participation. Would anybody like to respond?
Well, Well, I would, but I don't know the answer, so I won't.
We can look into transportation. I started to look at that, and it's twofold. The cost is $55 per trip. The bigger issue might be getting a driver, because they're paid by the hour, and they would be in the queue to go to other athletic events where they would be there for 5 or 6 hours. So I can't guarantee the driver, but that would be that scenario. And I believe that, I don't know, I think we could ask the athletic director about the travel to meets protocol. Because there seems to be a lot of lost time there for traveling to the meets, because the design would be to travel to Marlboro to get there at 2:30 when their bus leaves, which means our kids leave school early and miss class. And I don't know if that's set in stone. Look, Gary, Amy, I was just going to see what, and then definitely.
Sorry. The travel is not set in stone as of yet. Once sort of the time spent on looking at these other possibilities, I have not communicated with Marlboro in terms of the meet schedule. I don't see a huge issue in terms of trying to accommodate, obviously, academics. We always want to try to do everything we can to have our students in class as much as possible. So I can certainly speak to them about bus departure times and obviously making those adjustments. The other piece, I think, in terms of just responding to Mrs. Stanton's question regarding what other pool time or was pool time looked at in terms of in the spring. And part of the decision, we always look at pool time as soon as the season ends. You know, there's not a commitment. What happens is other schools don't allow us to book anything till after July 1st. So very often we cannot secure any pool time prior to that happening, particularly at high schools. So again, it's not that we didn't look at a number of factors before decisions or recommendations were made, but you know, there were some limiting components to that.
Anyone else?
I've got, part of the transportation questions I have is, I understand supplying transportation for the practices can go on, but why couldn't we also supply the transportation from FDR to the meet rather than going transportation to Marlboro, then to the meet?
I'm sorry, Gary. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, whenever a meet comes up, out-of-town meet, rather than our kids or our swimmers going to Marlboro, getting transportation to Marlboro, then busing up from there, why couldn't we just transport them to the meet itself?
We're thinking that's a possibility.
Okay.
What is a typical start time for a swim meet?
4:30.
Thank you.
But there must be warm-up time.
You have to get there at least 30 minutes prior.
Okay. So 3:30.
Minimum.
Thank you.
Well, no, yeah, I was asking.
Yeah.
We can wait till after. I don't know what we're doing here tonight. I mean, as far as like, are we making a decision, or was this to hear the input, talk more on Thursday? I mean, I don't know what direction we're going in. So, so I don't want, if we want to bat this around some more, go ahead. But my thing can wait till the end.
Well, one of my questions, and I don't know if this is so much a comment, but what's our timeline here? What's our drop dead date in which a decision has to be made? And I'm sure that it's a moving target, because the longer we wait on anything, the more pool time disappears, and at some point we make a decision to do something, we may not have the resources to do it. So that was just kind of a question that I wanted to air. And I don't quite understand the lack of or the issue about students not being able to participate, I get the transportation, and I think that we should try to find, and that may, given all that's happened, that may be something we should be doing, is looking at a transportation so that it's not on the back of the parents to try to get the students there. And quite frankly, whether it's there and back or there, whatever works. I mean, I'm open to that. And, if we're going to run a bus over there, it's only a 2-hour practice. It's not 5 hours. So, again, you got to work through with Mr. Treadwell on that. But what I hear this over again, that my student won't be able to participate because, and I'm not grasping what that is, and I wondered if I could does anybody else understand why? I mean, I get the meat issue.
That's the issue.
Is it just meats?
Well, yeah, because it's 2 days
Okay.
each week.
How many
Okay.
weeks?
8 weeks.
Oh,
I
so
believe.
16 meets
Okay,
altogether.
but if we could,
16 classes or.
but perhaps we can resolve that again by transportation that runs parallel to Marlboro, rather than, I mean,
Well, I do believe that would work because
I mean,
that wasn't that big an issue in the past.
it'd be crazy for us to take the kids to Marlboro only for them to go to Kingston.
What you're saying, Glenn,
Nuts.
what you're saying is that students that could leave at 2:15 from Roosevelt could get to the site of the meet and get
Most
prepared?
of them. There are a couple
Yeah.
that are a little farther away. And I
But it
think
would
they
be
were
no
mentioned
different
earlier.
than-
No
All right.
different than if we were running our own program. to be
Exactly.
clear.
It would be
So,
exactly the
right.
same as
Yeah.
running our own.
Right.
Okay.
We would also not have to pay for pool time, just the transportation. That's got to be cheaper.
Yeah, and,
The only other thing, I mean, not the only other thing, but one other thing that I heard that I thought was very interesting, that I think Derek brought up, was, would Marlboro consider splitting their pool for practices? Okay, it's been discussed and it's not an option. Okay. Great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Outside the box.
They're, and I we certainly don't know what's going through their board or their district's mind, but they're in really tough financial straits in Marlboro. It's no secret. I mean, big problems. So, I mean, they might even see the merger as being advantageous. So, short of them charging us an arm and a leg to split the pool, at almost usury rates, I don't think that they really have any appetite to do that. That this to them is probably a way of keeping their swim team viable as well and alive, I suspect. Doesn't mean
Okay.
I'm all for it, but I'm just saying I think that's probably what's going through their mind.
I guess I'll explain why I called this meeting.
That would be nice.
Okay. It was to get the information out that you have, I have heard that you haven't, and also to give an opportunity for the superintendent to give her reasoning for this decision she has made, and also an opportunity for the community to come and talk to us should the superintendent decide to change her mind. And the reason today is because of the short timeline. We have to hear all the facts, and if we were to change, we'd have to do it very quickly. So even 3 days would make a difference. So that's why you're here.
Well, so are you telling me that there's a decision that needs to be made tonight?
Decision has already been made.
Oh.
Then why are we here? Why am I wasting my time?
You're not
if
wasting
somebody's
your time.
already made a decision.
You are not
This
wasting-
is a farce.
I beg your
If
pardon.
what you said is true,
Excuse me? Can I finish, please? It's
please do.
Fine, thank you. The decision was made in June to merge the team. It was voted on. It's a done deal. It's a fact. When I'm giving you and everybody else an opportunity to voice your opinion as to whether you think the superintendent should change her mind. It's her decision, but I wanted to give you input, the ability to give your input. That's why you're here.
I'm uncomfortable with a lot there.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I think, and Greer's, I see what Greer is saying as a recommendation. I believe this is a decision that the board makes.
I
And
beg your pardon.
is it?
It's-
Okay,
it's a-
I guess
it-
I'm looking for clarity on that. I mean, if,
Unless we have to go to the lawyers, I believe it's a decision of the superintendent.
It's a recommendation
not
by
think
the
so.
superintendent.
yeah.
Or it has been,
Right, and you're correct, it's already been decided.
yeah.
So,
She would have to recommend that we de-merge. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's why we're having this meeting.
right,
The other part of that, though, is that we approved the merger, therefore, if there's a recommendation to demerge, we would also have to approve that.
absolutely.
That's correct.
So,
But I think what they're saying is we cannot even consider a demerger unless the superintendent recommends it. We cannot initiate a vote on the demerger as a board or individually as a board member.
I'm not gonna state an opinion.
That's,
That's
I'm-
what I
I'm
thought.
just-
That's
That's
the only
my-
interpretation I can give to
that's,
what Doug has just
that
said.
is my interpretation. I'd be happy to go to lawyers and find out if that's true or not, but that's my interpretation of what it is.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'll say, that's not the direction I want to go in. I mean, I listen to Greer. I think that, I'm not saying I disagree with that, and I'm not suggesting that I want to force any kind of a change in that. I think this information was good to have, and I think there's, I'm not sure that there's a big decision to be made here or a big change to be made, but perhaps the whole process could be tweaked a little bit to make this year the best year it can possibly be, and down the road, make sure that we do a better job of any merging that we look at in the future. But I think the most important one at this point is, what can we do to make this the most palatable to everyone who's involved? And, you know, whether at some point, Greer, you find that, you know what, there is a reason to reverse the merger. I mean, that'll be a discussion we can talk more of. But whether it's a matter of looking at transportation to make it easier for the parents and for the students so that we can get the greatest amount of participation possible, doing the dual transportation when it comes to meets. I mean, to me, that's what I see as being the value of tonight. So, you know, I don't want anybody to be disillusioned that there's going to be a huge reversal, because I don't think that's in the making. I think what we're trying to do is just find out what the really important things are here. And I mean, it's great. I mean, I know how important it is to have students involved in athletics, and whatever athletic program it is, it's important, and I can appreciate that. And we've got to find a balance to make it the right one. And it's not dollars and cents. I mean, it's kind of interesting to listen to it and say it's $1,400 versus $200. Quite frankly, that doesn't matter in the scheme of things when we're talking. I mean, when the budget that we have, $12,000 isn't a decision maker as far as I'm concerned. But how do we make it a program that we can all work with, that it makes sense? Granted, it's, you know, from what I see we're putting together here, we could have done a much better job of it getting to where we are today. Don't know that we need to kick anybody anymore on that. I think that's done. Let's try to work together and find out how do we make it the best that we can going forward. And quite frankly, to me, it sounds like we're going to be merged with Marlboro. I think that's what I'm hearing, that's what I see based on the information. So how do we make that the best?
Why don't we go through that? I mean, I was under the impression that there was gonna be some vote, like this was the board, we were bringing back information because we weren't involved in the process, and now there is no process. So we just wasted days of talking about stuff that really nobody could, there's
Well,
nothing to
you know what, that's not really true.
It is true.
No.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Will you stop and let me answer you?
Yeah, we're merging.
You know what, I move that we dismiss this meeting because this has become hostile.
No, it's not hostile. I'm just
Yes,
saying
it
the
is.
bottom line we're gonna
You're
merge
not even
Marlboro.
listening, sir.
Yeah.
We may be able to solve your problem, which is,
problem is having-
stop, will you let me finish?
Yeah.
You through?
Yeah.
Can I have my turn?
Glenn, that's fine.
We may be able to work out your biggest problem, which is the transportation and the missing of school. I'm sorry if you can't wear green and gold, I get that. But you can swim. If you can still swim, that's what should be important. If you have to wear purple and gold or whatever they are over there, fine. If we can get you there without missing your classes and include the young people from Haviland, that's a win-win situation. And that's how I feel. And if we went to Bard, we'd be excluding everyone who wanted to try out from Haviland. We would say, yeah, don't even bother because you can't do it. And so I personally, Perry, agree with you. I believe that the merger is a good thing at this moment.
All right, this isn't a discussion, I'm really sorry.
But you gave him the opportunity, so
I didn't give him the
No, we
opportunity, I
didn't.
couldn't get a word in edgewise to stop him. That, it's the way the board works, it's the way, you know, the way it works.
And just say blindsided, that's all.
We'll, you know, it'll soon be adjourned, we'll all be here, I'll stay as long as you want, all right? It's just, this formats, and that's the way it is.
I'm happy to hear that I can speak.
Okay. Any other comments?
With the time schedule, Doug, you say it's a critical time schedule. How long have we got to try and solve the transportation issue? I wouldn't want to call it inside information.
Also, November 11th.
I just understand that the transportation issue is a little more than many people realize. At the time that students are being transported to athletic events and moved from site to site and stuff like that, is the highest usage of buses in the district. And basically, Mr. Treadwell, with few exceptions, dictates the number of buses that can hit the road at that time. So the first issue we're going to have to deal with is if we're going to try and solve the issue, which is significant. There's no way I would want to tell a kid he can't participate in a sports program if he comes back and tells me, I can't because I need to go to class. I mean, somebody tells me, well, he's got a tutor. Maybe the family wants to give a little, take a little. You know, the tutor can arrange a different time. Maybe the tutoring is earlier. Although at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm not sure I'm going to be tutored with anything. But, I mean, that balance. But the fact of the matter is that if a student's got to leave class that many times for an event, there's no way they're going to be successful. Really no way they're going to be successful. The Haviland kids, I don't know what their dismissal time is, and I don't know what their master schedule is, as what is the last class
3:05.
available.
I think it's 3:05,
Yeah,
or somewhere around there.
that's
yeah.
a dismissal time?
Yes.
And, I don't know how they schedule the courses, but are there significant courses at the 3:05 slot? I mean, honors courses are being offered at that?
They're
or
all over
what?
the, they're all
Well,
over
in
the
the middle
clock.
school, it's all.
Yeah. It's like,
Other
it's like
than
the high school.
Earth science,
you know.
there could be earth science.
So we might find some kids at Haviland, they could basically be skipping a study hall at that time, but another student may be missing his math class, his honors math class every time.
And that's, yeah. And the answer to your question is 3 weeks. That's
Well,
why,
3 weeks starts practice, but I mean,
well, you have to have
But we have to
transportation by
schedule-
then.
I think we need to wrap it up this week. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see how, I don't think the league would even entertain anything beyond this week.
Okay. Anything else? Gary?
Yes. If we couldn't handle it with our transportation department, I think we also should look at outside service and get some numbers from them.
Okay. No.
And George is looking at it, and again, the problem is finding a driver. But if the driver were to go and stay and then return, it may increase the possibility of finding a driver, but it is, as Dan pointed out, our busiest time. We have a cadre of people who sign up for the trips because, in our winter season, we have all the athletic. And so typically, those athletic events, as well as the swim events, are much longer than a 2-hour run. So if I'm a driver and I want to put in the extra time, I'm going to sign up for the 6-hour trip, not the 2-hour trip. So.
Well, the advantage is this is a daily trip. It's a
Right,
routine. I
right.
mean, there's points that it could be
And
attractive to the right one.
That's right.
He's just got to try. And I agree. I think looking at outsourcing, even though I'm sure it'll be more expensive, I think it's certainly something that,
We
and
could
I'm sure George has that.
Yeah, he has that information, because the outsourcing, we can still, I don't know, I'm not sure entirely how it works, but we could, if private people want to do that, he can typically get a better price, but.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? All right, I had a request for an executive session from Kevin. Is that a personnel matter?
Yes, yes,
Has to do with swim?
yes. You know, so just a couple of things about, you know, a matter pertaining to a particular person or person.
Okay,
So,
all right,
and it won't be long, but.
okay. Because I promised I'd stay here.
Yeah,
So,
no, yeah, I
you know.
won't keep you or keep them.
No, so-
I don't want to be here too long either, so.
I don't, I'll stay as long as I have to. That's,
No, I
that's
just
not
meant
an
I
issue.
won't keep them waiting, so I
Yeah.
meant.
Normally, that's after
A second public participation.
upcoming meetings and that. So, all right, upcoming meetings. The next board meeting is October 24th here in the administration office. It's a regular Board of Education meeting. I'd point out that the Harvest Pops concert is Wednesday at the high school. Anybody misses that, it's your own fault, because it's always good. Can I have a motion to enter into executive
So moved.
session for, you're not gonna let me finish?
Yeah, go ahead, you can finish.
Because I was trying to,
Thought I
I'm
said it
stumbling with
already.
actual words. To
I
discuss
said
person or persons, that's good enough. Okay,
So moved.
so moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
From a discussion point of view, when we come back from this exec session,
We're
can
going-
you summarize for us where we stand and what we're going to be doing? We haven't really had a summary of, at this point, what that we've had, we should do this, we'll want to look at that, we don't think we could do that. I'd like
A summary?
a summary of all of that. What are we going to do? Are we going to do nothing? We're going to attempt to do this? We're going to attempt to do that? And a time frame for these parents so that they're not sitting there hanging, wondering what's going on.
We can do that.
Okay.
All those in favor? Opposed? We are now in executive session.
We'll be back.
Promise to be very short. Okay, can we get back to business here?
Yep, I'll make a motion to return to regular session.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? No. Motion carries. We are now back in, okay, we promised a summary, if you would like to.
Start us off, yeah. Okay, so in summary, there was a resolution made last year to merge with the Marlboro team. And that was approved by the Board of Education. What we neglected to have was a communication plan. And so here we are at a late hour with a group of concerned parents and a swim team, and looking to offer the best viable solution for a varsity swim team. And so what we've heard is that we are down to a situation where we have a team and a merger and an athletic varsity schedule for an entire season all set in place with the merger. And what would make the, and pool time, consistent, full pool time, 6 days a week. And what we're left with are two items, one being transportation, and the other is the issue of leaving school early to get to meets. And I believe we can work out the situation. As somebody said, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to get on a bus to go to Marlboro to go to Kingston. So I'm confident that we can work something out with Marlboro where we would meet them at the swim meets. I don't see how that could be an issue. You do lose a little something on the camaraderie on the bus, but I think in the big scheme of things, it doesn't make sense to have students lose class time to leave early to go to one place when they're really expected to compete at another. I certainly know it just so happens that the head of Section 9 is also the superintendent of Marlboro schools, and I'm sure we could come to some agreement about our teams meeting them at the meets. I'm also a little bit more confident that if we look at a transportation arrangement that maybe has a few more hours on it, we might entice a bus driver to take that run, and we will immediately start to work on transportation to and from practices. So at the end of the day, we have a possibility of merger. We'll work on the transportation issues. We have a pool time, and we will get not have the kids circling the globe to get to a swim meet. We will reassess this merger at the end of the school year. It is a one-year merger. I think we definitely need to look at this. We need to look at plans for merger in the future, and we really sincerely want to see our swimmers in the pool as much as possible and want to help them get to the swim time and the swim meets without missing classes.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Meeting is now adjourned.